I got broads in Atlanta. Just to lean the family. Credit cards and the scammers.
So on the one hand, you say, look, you don't have a clue what you're doing. Stay out of it, right? But we live in democratic systems where it's our responsibility not to stay out of it. So how do you manage that? Because you seem to be saying leave it to
humility.
Humility, right? But humility doesn't preclude activism.
Generally, it does, yes.
Why?
But
Why
that
does it
doesn't mean that I'm saying that there is no situations under which political action or activism is justified, because there are clearly situations under which it's justified. But it's not the first thing that you should be taught how to do when you're an 18-year-old person going to university and you don't know a damn thing.
So I don't doubt that there's callow youth. I don't doubt that people have a lot to learn, and that,
yeah, and they're not learning it from their professors either.
That may be true. That may be true. But you're clearly, I mean, a big part of your narrative comes from that energy of resisting that kind of, you know,
circumventing it.
Circumventing, but you're also saying, you know, these people who complain about the world, they should just focus on their own, what they can control themselves and work within that space.
To begin with.
To begin with, but equally, there is a slight derision in the tone about people who actually care about bigger than self issues.
It's not slight.
Okay, it's big then. So bigger than self problems, which arguably...
They don't care about them. They just act like they're just acting out the delusion that they care about them generally.
You seem to be caught
I
up
watch
in
the activists at the universities.
Right.
I know what they're like.
And we've seen the videos, and we know that kind of confrontation.
Yes.
And I don't
We've seen
doubt,
Wilfrid Laurier, for example.
I've seen many, but I don't doubt that there are those who are like that. But there are many millions more, and I mentioned Gandhi, but you know, arguably...
You can't use him as an example.
Okay, well, Buddha, for example.
Or
Buddha left his wife and child.
Yeah, but you can't use them as examples.
Okay,
first of all, like Buddha's like Christ. It's like, well, there's Christ. It's, yeah. What do you mean?
No,
there's Christ in university activists?
No, but there's...
Like, no.
Well, there's... so Martin Luther King, can I use him?
Yeah.
Right? So Martin Luther King had an affair. It was quite well known. You know, his personal life was a bit complex.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say that, you know, he had to sort that out before he went to sort of try and deal with civil rights in the US. So I'm trying to get at the core of the tension.
No, I would say that his own personal faults didn't preclude his social responsibility. Right. And it really is important to get that straight. But I would say that his own personal faults served as a detriment to his overall mission.
Right.
And then I'm not, believe me, I'm not saying that if I was in Martin Luther King's position, I would have done a better job. It's like, I am not saying that, man, not in the least. But back to the idea of sorting yourself out. It's like, well, first of all, it's a lot harder to do than you think. Yeah. I mean, I've run students through this experiment. We used to do existential experiments in my Maps of Meaning class, and so the existential experiment was identify one thing that you think that isn't going well that you could fix. And then go try to fix it. And then just document what happens. It's like, well, you know, it's way hard. So let me tell you a brief story. I had one student whose mother had died, and the house was chaotic, and no one had picked up the necessary domestic responsibilities. And so he decided, and that wasn't good for anyone, and so he decided that he was going to step into the shoes of his mother. Well, God, I mean, it just provoked a complete bloody war in the household, you know, because who the hell did he think he is, and why do we need that, and why are you doing that, and aren't you making us lonesome for Mom, and, you know, why do you think that you're better than us by taking up this responsibility? And so it's like, I'm going to go buy groceries. That was his plan. It's like, well, you know, that's a hell of a lot harder than you think. Yeah. And so, number one, cleaning up your room is proper because maybe you can manage it, although probably you can't, because you could also extend that by beautifying it. But number two, it involves way more forces than you think. Yeah. And so, because to get your house in order is very, very difficult.
But if it's so difficult, and I need to spend most of my energy and time dealing with that, who are the people who are going to be doing the other work that needs to be done socially and culturally and politically?
Well, hopefully competent people.
Right,
with any luck. People who've already done that.
You say, okay, that's interesting. So you're saying it's a necessary transition. You're saying there's something about the life...
Jesus, I'm saying something simple. If you can't make your damn bed, quit waving placards at corporations. It's like, Jesus, it's like, seriously, man. It's like, what the hell? What makes you can't get this tiny little part of the world that's actually right at your feet, functional. You have contempt for it. It's just my bedroom.
That seems like gratuitous caricature of people. I mean, look...
It's not gratuitous.
Well, their flip on that is, look, why should I waste my time making my bed when we've got to deal with these problems in the world? You know,
because you risk inflating your own ego by dealing with the problems of the world. So, it's like it's the cathedral problem again. It's like, oh, I should be at the center of the universe.
Right. So
it's like, yeah, well, maybe not.
I'm trying to find a resolution of this that goes beyond the existing cultural conflict around it. Because no doubt people need to attend to their own projection and their own limitations and have humility and some psychological insight and work harder on what they're directly responsible for. I don't doubt that. But I am concerned with a message that says that's all you should be doing, and until you figure that out, don't do anything else.
No, I'm not saying that's all you should be doing.
But you are saying you have to do it first.
Before you can do that, you should be very leery of assuming that when you try to do something else, you won't just make it worse. And you will.
Right.
Look, I've dealt with people who've dealt with complex systems for a very long period of time. And I know the difference between someone who can make a complex system better and someone who will make a complex system worse. And most people will make a complex system worse.
Okay.
That's for sure.
So that's... Okay, that's good, because that's coming to the question of development and the question of human maturation and the question of what it means to unfold throughout the lifespan. So just to try and distill that last point, you're sort of saying don't begin and end with your own responsibility of cleaning your room and sorting your personal and immediate affairs out, but realize that until you can do that, you may be lacking certain forms of competence that might make you doubt whether you should be quite so visceral and adamant about your political views.
Precisely that, yes, and it's exactly the opposite of what students are taught in universities.
But you're not saying don't care about those things or don't act on them, but just while you're doing them, attend to your own limitations and competencies.
Well, I'm saying you should be aware of your own competence and your limits, and that's especially true if you're very young, because like, what the hell do you know? You haven't done anything. You're like, I tell 18-year-olds, 6 years ago you were 12. It's like, what the hell do you know? You haven't. You're under the care of your family or the state. You haven't established an independent existence. You haven't had children. You haven't started a business. You haven't taken responsibility for anything. You don't have a degree. You haven't finished your courses. You don't know how to read. You can't think. You can't speak. You're ill-kempt. You don't know how to present yourself. Well, Jesus, you know, and it's just not right to tell people in that situation that they should go out and change the socioeconomic structure of the culture.
What those children or young people observe are not wise adults managing complex systems adeptly. They see people giving subsidies to fossil fuel companies. They see people
they see activists
injustice.
teaching them at university who are no smarter than they are.
Jordan,
and they think, well, I can do that.
You're so hung up on the university experience. We keep coming back to this issue of the activists at the university, which is clearly very salient for you. But for those who are not there, it's frankly alienating. Because your other work is so fantastic, but it keeps coming back to this narrative of these slightly callow students who are maybe a bit over-enthusiastic about a political issue.
Well, I'm more concerned with their professors than with the students.
Okay, also the
and
professors
I'm concerned about
them.
the professors because they've completely corrupted the humanities. And the humanities are the core of the university. And by corrupting the humanities, they're corrupting the fundamental structure of our civilization. And they're spreading that out into the general culture.
But
and there's no excuse for that.
They may be doing that, but simultaneously others are corrupting the ecological foundations, the social foundations. Democracy is arguably dying. There are real problems that are existential threats at a different level.
There's a whole large variety of existential
And I don't
threats.
think that's happening principally because some people are being taught feminist theory in the University of Toronto. It's not that. It's something else, much bigger and broader and deeper, that when people raise these issues, you focus on that small issue, not the big ones that they're worried about.
Well, it depends on the issue, I suppose. I would say that...
climate change, for example, just for argument's sake.
Well, what should I say about climate change?
Well, what should you do
if you're young? Did you drive here?
No, I didn't.
What did you do? How did you get here?
I took public transport.
Okay, well, you know.
But that's not really. But again, that's hardly the point. I mean,
well, no, it is the point.
Well,
it is the point because it's part of the problem with climate change is irreducible complexity.
Right.
It's like you know there's a cost to our existence, and the cost is externalization.
Yeah.
Right, externalization of costs, and we don't know how to manage that. And I would say, should we be concerned about it? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Do we know how to be concerned about it? Not really.
Not really, right. So then how do we learn? That becomes the question, right? So the younger generation who are
likely to be
more directly affected, the kinds of people in developing countries and younger people who feel the pinch of this all the more because they can see, for example, New York, the chance of it being underwater by the end of the century is not negligible. And therefore, they're looking for a response that really matters to them. And when you think about responsibility,
that's easy. That's easy.
No, but their view is don't patronize me about my bedroom when I've got the planet to save.
I'm not patronizing you. I think
your
bedroom is
I'm
important.
just saying that there is a There is a voice.
No, I understand. I think your bedroom is important.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they
no,
might
but I
too,
seriously
but they think the
that.
whole planet is more important. They're more concerned about that. And why is
your
that wrong?
bedroom is a microcosm of the planet.
Right. Well, tell us about that then.
Well, let's go back to the climate issue here first, because there's this guy that I'm aware of. His name is Boyan Slat, and I'm going to talk to him in the relatively near future, I think. And he's a model for young people. He went out scuba diving when he was 17, and there was a lot of plastic, and that sort of bothered him. And then he started thinking about manta rays and how they move through the water, and then he noticed that most of the plastic was in the top 6 inches, and then he thought, I wonder if I could build a machine that was like a manta ray that would float on top of the water. And anyways, to make a long story short, he's devised a way to rid 50% of the plastic in the world's oceans within 5 years, and has spent the last 6 years developing that, and is well on the way to implementing it, and it looks like it might work, and he's going to be able to make a profit from it, just to add that extra bit of punch. Yeah. And so Boyan Slat, I would say, it's like, I don't know if his room was clean or not, but there was something about him that was dead on, because when he looked at a problem like that, he thought, I'm not going to go out there and tell a bunch of other people what they're doing wrong so that they can solve it. I'm going to bloody well fix it. And that's what I'm telling young men in particular to do. Although, you know, if young women want to do that, it's like, great, more power to them. But, you know, people say, well, I'm taking climate change seriously. I'm going out to protest. Like, you're not taking it seriously. That's not serious. Serious is you're going to devote 80 hours of your life to it for the rest of your life, right? You're going to work on that so intently that you're not even going to think about anything else. Like,
so
that's
serious. So what you care about...